Leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
No point in pursuing the line of questioning which the Leader of the Conservatives has embarked upon, as you're determined to kick this issue as far into the long grass as possible. So I'd like to turn to something else. I wonder if the First Minister saw in the Times last Thursday a news story under the headline "End of Wind Turbine Blight After Lake District Campaign," which refers to the demolition of a major wind farm development, first time this has ever happened, after 25 years, because planning permission for an extension was refused on grounds that the wind farm desecrated an area of outstanding natural beauty. This follows numerous examples in England and indeed in Northern Ireland, where the protection of majestic landscapes has been given higher priority than reducing CO2 emissions. I wonder if the First Minister therefore will follow this lead for Wales and give greater protection to our own majestic landscapes rather than reducing CO2 emissions.
Well, Title 8 does that, of course, because when Title 8 was first developed, it recognised, for example, there were special conditions in national parks. And there were particular areas where wind applications were due to come. Now, he mentions wind turbines, but nothing else. You know, is he saying that, for example, that open cast is fine? Is he saying that other forms of nuclear energy, well, we support nuclear energy. We want to see a new nuclear power plant on Anglesey. But I don't think it's right to say you can pick out wind farms and say they are particularly more of a blight on the landscape than anything else. And some people love them, some people hate them. I think that's what I've discovered over the years. What we do know is we do need more sources of energy. We need our nuclear plants, that's true, but we also need to make sure that we have renewable sources of energy that create energy security. Or are we saying that we need to import energy from other countries, which is something I'd be surprised if he was advocating. And one way of doing that is to harness a renewable natural resource like wind, and also the tidal lagoon. We're still none the wiser as to whether the UK government will back the tidal lagoon. We have, out here in the Bristol Channel, one of the highest tidal reaches in the world. It is energy that will always be there as long as the moon is above us, and yet no decision yet from the UK government. We need to make sure that we harness the renewable resources that we have, and it's about time the UK government took a decision supporting the tidal lagoon.
I rise to the challenge that the First Minister gave to me. No, I would take exactly the same view of proposed open-cast developments which intruded upon areas of outstanding natural beauty. And similarly with nuclear power stations. There would be no Hinkley Point power station in prospect if it weren't for the UK government's decision to pay ridiculous amounts of money for energy to be produced in many years' time, more than twice the going rate that we have at the moment. So I agree with the First Minister in that respect. He'll know that there have been many controversial projects involving wind farms in mid-Wales. There is one currently in respect of which there's an appeal at the Hendy wind farm near Llandegli Rocks in Radnorshire. And the chairman of the CPRW in Brecon and Radnor says that this wind farm will have serious impacts, particularly on local landscape, historic culture, ecology and tourism. Let's not forget that 1 in 6 jobs in Wales depends on tourism. So there's always a balance to be drawn in these cases. But I think the question of proportionality comes into play here. You know, Wales is irrelevant, actually, in the context of reducing CO2 emissions over the entire planet. We produce maybe 0.1% of global CO2 emissions. The whole UK produces only 1%. So it makes no difference in terms of CO2 emissions globally if Wales participates in this grand green project or not. But it does make a vast difference to the people of mid-Wales if their landscapes are desecrated by having forests of windmills all over the place. And that impacts also on the tourism economy. So what I'm asking the First Minister for is more proportionality in the Welsh Government's policy on green energy.
Well, the proportionality is already there. It's not all focused on one form of energy. I can't comment, obviously, on any appeal that is ongoing. What I can say to him is this: Wales is never irrelevant. Wales is never irrelevant, and we have a role to play in terms of reducing greenhouse gases for the good of all humanity.
From CO2 emissions in Wales is, to all intents and purposes, irrelevant. That's the point I was making, given that our output is so small, whereas the effect upon landscapes is immediate and apparent. But on that note, I would like to wish the First Minister a happy Christmas and a successful New Year, to congratulate him on the dexterity with which he's dodged or deflected most of the questions that I've asked him in the course of the year, and to look forward to many repetitions of today in the course of the next 12 months.
Well, damned by faint praise, I'd call that. I return the compliment to him. I look forward to more relevant questions from him in the future. But nevertheless, he and I will not agree when it comes to climate change and to carbon emissions. I take the view that the vast bulk of science shows us that climate change is happening and that human beings have an effect on climate change, and we in Wales must play our part just like any other country.